It's crazy to think 1998 was 26 years ago. The 90s were a time of discovery for me as I began my gaming journey. I remember most of the games I played during that time, but one game has always stuck with me, Ocarina of Time. Like many, I consider OOT a masterpiece and one of the best games of all time. The coming-of-age story of Link, the amazing dungeon design, OOT has stood the test of time not only as one of the best Zelda games ever, but the greatest game ever made. I have quite the history with OOT as that's what really got me into streaming. Many moons ago, I actually used to speedrun it when the route was the CAC route and got a somewhat decent PB. Before we head into the 100%, I'd like to hear what you consider the best Zelda game in the comments below. Now, what defines 100% in Ocarina of Time? Let me lay out the challenge. We must collect every single obtainable item in the game, acquire every upgrade which includes bomb bags, quivers, and so forth, complete every dungeon and side quest in the game, acquire all the songs, all 36 heart pieces, and all 100 Skulltulas. As with all my 100%s, I did the entire playthrough on my Twitch, so feel free to stop by to possibly be featured in the next video. I didn't do this on original hardware like I usually do, but this is almost the same thing in my eyes, so not too bad. With the challenge laid out, let's find out how hard is it to 100% The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Our story begins with young Link having an awful nightmare of a man chasing a girl and woman on horseback. The Great Deku Tree instructs a fairy, Navi, to go to young Link to aid him in the journey ahead. Upon awakening, we head to a small maze to find the Kokiri Sword, the hidden treasure of the Kokiri. We then head to the local shop to acquire the Deku Shield for protection. A Goomba named Mido won't allow us to see the Great Deku Tree unless we are equipped with a sword and a shield, but luckily, we are now. We meet the Great Deku Tree who informs us of a great evil that is gaining power. We head into the tree to test our courage. Upon entering, we find a vast room with a few ladders and we defeat our first enemy to acquire the Deku Nut. A little further in the dungeon, we open a chest to get the slingshot, which will allow us to shoot enemies from a distance. Now is the perfect time to say this as we get our first gold Skulltula. I won't be going over every single one as I did in previous videos, as it becomes very repetitive, but here's the first one. We reach the top of the dungeon where we take an Assassin's Creed leap of faith to enter the basement. We learn from a shrub about the boss Goma and how to defeat it. We make our way to Goma's lair and the beast falls from the ceiling to reveal itself. After a hard fought battle, Goma is slain and we get our first heart container. The Great Deku Tree tells us the history of Hyrule and how it came to be. After the story, sadly, the Great Deku Tree passes away and gives us the Kokiri Emerald. We say our final goodbyes as we make our way out into the world. As we leave the forest, we are stopped by a girl, Saria, who doesn't want to see us go and gives us the Fairy Ocarina, an instrument that allows us to play songs we learn throughout the game. Leaving the forest, we get a glimpse of Hyrule Field and meet an annoying owl named Kabora Gabora, who offers tips to us as the player but talks quite a lot. Traversing Hyrule Field, we arrive at Castle Town, which is a lively marketplace with different shops and people throughout. We push a bit further to find Hyrule Castle and our favorite owl talks our ear off again before we can continue. We meet a girl named Malin by some vines who mentions her dad must have fallen asleep at work. She gives us an egg. Sneaking our way past the guards, we meet up with Talon and use the now hatched Kuko to wake him up. He scurries away in a panic. After some more guard evasion, we arrive in the courtyard of the castle where we meet Princess Zelda. She mentions a dream of dark storms and how we're the ray of light. She tells us the story of the three goddesses that hid the Triforce somewhere within Hyrule. Zelda informs us that the Triforce can grant any wish no matter how good or evil. She tells us the Temple of Time is the doorway to his sacred realm, and she points out that the Gerudo man from the desert named Ganondorf is that evil she has dreamt about. As we leave, we are stopped by Impa, who teaches us Zelda's Lullaby, which I failed a few times. We leave the castle and make our way to Kakariko Village. We help a lady capture her lost Kukos, and she rewards us with our first empty bottle. Something OOT does well is it doesn't hold back with its creepy locations, such as the graveyard we enter. We defile a grave and we learn the Sun Song, which allows us to go from day to night, back to day whenever we want. Continue to defile said grave, we find the Hylian Shield. And yet another grave, we get our first heart piece. At this point, we've collected 10 gold Skulltula, so we head to the House of Skulltula to get our first reward, the adult wallet. We leave Kakariko and discover Lon Lon Ranch, where we see Talon again and we play a chicken game. As we beat it, we are rewarded with our second bottle. We meet up with Malin, who is humming a song, and she tells us about Epona. We whip out our ocarina and she teaches us Epona's song, which will be very important later on. Still at the ranch, we go through a crawl space to find our second heart piece. We head to Gerudo Valley, and behind a waterfall is our third heart piece. We use a Kuko to glide down to a box that we break to reveal our fourth heart piece. Using the river in Gerudo Valley, we get spit out to Lake Hylia, and we create the Scarecrow song, which will be important later on. Now we take on my favorite pastime, fishing. For a mere 20 rupees, our objective is to catch a 10+ pound fish. Of course, being the fishing guru I am, we secure the fish and win our 5th heart piece. Back at Kokiri Forest, we hit some bullseyes to get the seed bag upgrade. We also meet some Skull Kids who have us play songs with them. After a painstaking time, we can get our 6th heart piece. We traverse the Lost Woods until we come across an area called the Sacred Meadow. At the end of the meadow, we see our friend Saria, who is playing a catchy tune. She then teaches us Saria's song, which happens to be one of the best songs in any Zelda game to date. We play Saria's song for the Skull Kid and he likes it so much, we get our 7th heart piece. Back in Castletown, we find a lady's lost dog, and you betcha, our 8th heart piece. At this point, we have collected 20 gold Skulltula, so we grab the Stone of Agony as our reward. After our collectathon, we can continue the story. We head to Kakariko and give a guard Zelda's lair, which gives us access to Death Mountain. Atop the trail of Death Mountain, we arrive at Goron City and there's a rock shortage, aka Gorons are starving. We meet Darunia, the Goron boss, and we play him Saria's song. He jams out and tells us about Dodongo's Cavern, and that's the cause of the food shortage. He then gives us the Goron's bracelet, which allows us to pick up bomb flowers. Using a bomb flower, we get our 9th heart piece. We also blow the entrance to Dodongo's Cavern, and before we head in, we grab our 10th heart piece. Finally, we enter Dodongo's Cavern, and it's quite imposing as opposed to the Great Deku Tree dungeon. Progressing through, we do battle with a pair of Lizalfos who are more annoying than difficult. After their defeat, we place a bomb flower to activate the coolest staircase in the series. We then grab ourselves the bomb bag, which gives us access to our own bombs now. Using our new bombs, we bomb the eyes of what seems like a giant Dodongo to reveal a path deeper into the dungeon. We drop down a deep hole where we confront Dodongo himself. We quickly put him out by tossing bombs into his mouth, and he rolls into the lava and melts away. We grab another heart container and Darunia rewards us with the Goron's Ruby for our efforts. The Gorons try to give us a hug, but we get away just in time. Inside Goron City, we find a massive Goron who upgrades our bomb bag. At the peak of Death Mountain's volcano, we grab our 11th heart piece. We also visit our first fairy fountain, and the Great Fairy gives us the magic meter and the spin attack. We use our owl friend to fly to Kakariko, and he drops us on a roof that we use to then acquire our 12th heart piece. We also complete the shooting range to max out our seed bag. Back at Castletown, we do what I consider the most fun minigame in OT, the Bomb Chew minigame, which is basically like bowling as you drop a chew to reach holes down a runway. We win our first attempt to get our 13th heart piece. Winning yet again, we can then acquire a bomb bag upgrade. We head on over to Hyrule Castle and using our bombs reveal a crawl space. On the other side is a Great Fairy who gives us Din's Fire, which is basically the ability to engulf everything in a space with fire. In Hyrule Field, we find a shrub who sells us our 14th heart piece. Finding another scrub, we get a crispy nut upgrade as well. Along Zora's River, we meet the Magic Bean Salesman. Magic beans can be planted and they will be important later on. Continuing on, we grab our 15th and 16th heart piece. At a waterfall, we play Zelda's Lullaby to split the water and head on into Zora's domain. Lighting some torches within the domain, we can grab our 17th heart piece. At the peak of the domain, we play the diving game where we must collect all the rupees scattered throughout, and in doing so, we are rewarded with the silver scale, which allows us to dive much deeper than we usually can. We use the scale to immediately dive into a hole in the domain, leading us to Lake Hylia. We discover our third bottle, which has a message within. We meet the Zora King and deliver the message in the bottle. Turns out Princess Ruto is trapped within Jabu Jabu. The king moves out of the way in a timely fashion, and we enter Zora's fountain. Using our bombs, we reveal a secret passage to find another Great Fairy. She gives us Farora's Wind. Before we head inside Jabu Jabu, we have collected 30 Skulltulas at this point, so we can grab the Giant's Wallet. Back at Zora's fountain, we feed a fish to Jabu Jabu and we get sucked in. As we traverse Jabu, we find Princess Ruto, and she kind of just falls in a hole. Think of Jabu Jabu as an escort mission, so we have to carry Ruto around like a box throughout the dungeon. Taking care of some fishy enemies, we can acquire the boomerang. Using our boomerang, we encounter a suggestive bit of flesh, and I may have to blur this thing out for YouTube. We destroy it and take Ruto where she gets the spiritual stone. She's taken away from us and a giant Octo appears in her place. We do battle and swiftly defeat the Octo as we take the elevator up. We continue through the dungeon and come across Barnade, the boss of this dungeon. Using our boomerang, we can stun and damage Barnade until it swells up and is defeated. We collect our third heart container and Princess Ruto is pissed we took so long. Outside of Jabu Jabu, Ruto gives us the spiritual stone known as the Zora Sapphire, and she also says it's a sign of our engagement. So, woohoo. At this point, we have collected 40 gold Skulltulas and we are given Bombchus. Now that we have all 3 spiritual stones, we head back to the Temple of Time, but as we do, the sky turns gray and we see Zelda and Impa escaping on horseback. We then turn to see Ganondorf, who is giving chase. He nukes us with dark magic and gets away. In the moat around Castle Town, we dive down to get the Ocarina of Time. Zelda reaches out to us and she teaches us the Song of Time. Before we enter the Temple of Time, we meet the Happy Mask Salesman to get a side quest out of the way. Our first mask we get is the Keaton mask, and we sell it to the gate guard we met earlier in the game. Next up, we grab the Skull mask and sell it to the Skull Kid in the Lost Woods. Grab the Spooky mask and sell it to a kid in the graveyard. Our final mask we must sell is the Bunny Hood, and we find a runner in Hyrule Field that buys the Bunny Hood for a fortune. The Happy Mask Salesman is so impressed that he gives us the Mask of Truth. We use the Mask of Truth to scare the Deku Scrubs, and their leader gives us a nut upgrade to go away. Finally, we enter the massive Temple of Time. We play the Song of Time, and the 3 spiritual stones we collected are placed in their pedestals, and the door of time opens. We head inside and see the legendary Master Sword. We approach the sword and yoink it up. Ganondorf notes we were the key, and we awake inside a mysterious realm, and a man named Rauru states it is the Sage's realm, and we've been trapped inside for 7 whole years. He notes Ganondorf obtained the Triforce from the Temple of Light, and he has now taken over Hyrule. The Sage Rauru gives us the Light Medallion and tells us to get the other medallions to free the sages and fight back Ganondorf's rule. Back in the Temple of Time, a mysterious person named Sheik approaches us and tells us the locations of the temples we'll have to defeat. As we leave the Temple of Time, we see a desolate market in what Hyrule has become. We head to Lon Lon Ranch and a man named Ingo is taken over. He's not the nicest, but he allows us to ride the horses at the ranch. We play Epona's song and she comes galloping up to us. Ingo is upset we tamed Epona and challenges us to a race and bets Epona. We whoop him 2 times in a row and he gives us Epona but doesn't allow us to leave the ranch. Using Epona, we leap the fence and we are free from Ingo. We head to the graveyard and use a magic beam pad to lift us up to grab our 18th heart piece. We head inside a grave and find the ghost of Dampe, the Gravekeeper. He has us follow him, aka race him, and we keep up with him and he rewards us with the hook shot, which is super handy. Escaping Dampe's, we arrive at the windmill building in Kakariko and grab our 19th heart piece. A guy recognizes our ocarina and teaches us the Song of Storms, a song that lets us summon a storm. We grab our 20th heart piece by beating Dampe's race in under 1 minute. Using our hook shot, we zoom up to a man on our roof who's impressed and gives us our 21st heart piece. Out of curiosity, we check out Hyrule Castle and it's completely changed into Ganon's castle. Anyways, moving on, we head back to our home of Kokiri Forest and it's infested with monsters. We head into the Lost Woods and find Mido. He doesn't recognize us, so we play him Saria's song to pass him. We make our way through the sacred meadow where Saria used to play. Sheik appears and she teaches us the Minuet of Force, which will allow us to teleport to this location whenever we want. We can now head to the Forest Temple and we enter the Grand Hall that has its flames stolen by 4 Poes. We have our objective now and we make our way through the temple. We do battle with the Stalfos, and after defeating it, we get the Fairy Bow. Using the bow, we can straighten out a hallway in the temple, and at the end of it, we acquire the boss key. After getting the boss key, we come across a series of Poe portraits that we take out with our bow. In doing so, we get the first flame for the Grand Hall. A bit further in, we find the second Poe and the third Poe and get their flames as well, with the same methods. Back in the Grand Hall, the final Poe does Shadow Clone Jutsu, and after finding the real one a few times, we defeat it to get the final flame and activate the elevator to take us to the basement. We descend down the elevator and we have to complete a push puzzle. Easy work. Once the puzzle is completed, we find Ganondorf waiting for us, or rather, Phantom Ganon. As we learn from the pose, we wait for the Phantom to appear in the portraits and shoot it with our bow. We play volleyball with the Phantom, and with a hard slice of the Master Sword, Phantom Ganon is defeated and we grab another heart container. We get teleported back to the Chamber of the Sages, where Saria has become the Forest Sage. She gives us the Forest Medallion and we're teleported back to the dead Great Deku Tree. A Deku Tree sprout emerges and he tells us a story about our mother and how she was killed and her baby was raised as a Kokiri, aka Link. Back at the Temple of Time, she confronts us, basically saying we have a lot of work to do. She mentions that placing the Master Sword back in the pedestal will make us a child again. She then teaches us the Prelude of Light, which gives us the power to warp to the Temple of Time whenever we want. At this point, we have collected 50 gold Skulltulas and get rewarded with our 22nd heart piece. In Kakariko Village, we take on the shooting gallery and we have to hit every single rupee, and we do, to get the big quiver. We stop by a shop and the guy wants pose, but not just any pose, large pose hidden throughout Hyrule Field. There's 10 to collect and we sell them to the guy and gives us our final bottle we need. When we were a child, we made sure to make the Scarecrow song, and now we can activate it. Scarecrow song allows us to summon a Scarecrow in certain locations and we can hookshot to it. In doing so, above the Lake Hylia lab, we find our 23rd heart piece. I'm not gonna lie, getting the golden scale, which requires capturing a huge 13+ pound fish, was pain, but after about 1 hour of fishing, we grab the golden scale, which lets us dive as deep as Link possibly can. Using the scale, we head inside the lab and touch the bottom of the pool, and the scientist is so impressed, he gives us our 24th heart piece. We find a hidden grotto and dive down to get our 25th heart piece. We head to Goron City and it's abandoned. Not a Goron in sight. We do find one though, and it's Darunia's son, named Sindo. We listen to his tales and he gives us the Goron tunic, which gives us heat resistance. In Darunia's room, we find a secret passage that leads to the volcano atop Death Mountain. Inside, she greets us and teaches us the Bolero of Fire, another song that will let us warp. Inside the volcano, we use a magic bean to grab our 26th heart piece. Taking a leap of faith, we enter the Fire Temple. We find Darunia and he informs us that an evil dragon named Volvagia has come back to life and the Gorons are captured within the temple, waiting to be eaten by the dragon. Like the gold Skulltulas, I won't show every Goron saved, but here's the first one. And each one you save gives you a key and a tip. Deeper in the Fire Temple, we do battle with the Flare Dancer, but it's not really challenging, so we whoop it. We solve a pretty simple speed puzzle and are rewarded with the Megaton Hammer. This allows us to hit rusty switches and knock blocks over. At last, the final Goron is released and we get the boss key. Time to kill a dragon. We confront Volvagia and do battle with the dragon. I'm a Goomba and actually died during this fight, but no need to bring that up. We deal the final blow and Volvagia crumbles away and we grab another heart container. Death Mountain erupts and the ominous cloud fades away. Back in the Chamber of the Sages, Darunia is now the Fire Sage and gives us the Fire Medallion. Before we dive into everyone's favorite temple ever, we find another fairy fountain and the Great Fairy doubles our magic meter. With that out of the way, we head to Zora's domain, which has frozen over. Same as the domain, Zora's fountain has suffered the same frozen fate. Using the ice platforms, we collect our 27th heart piece. We arrive in an ice cavern, which is a nice little mini dungeon. Within, we find blue fire that melts away any red ice encountered in the dungeon. Using said blue fire, we can grab our 28th heart piece. Fast forward to the end of Ice Cavern, we grab the Iron Boots. Sheik appears and teaches us the Serenade of War, which is a warp song that warps us to Lake Hylia whenever we want. Using the Iron Boots, we sink to the bottom of Zora's fountain to grab our 29th heart piece. We use the blue fire we got from Ice Cavern and defrost the Zora King, who thanks us with the Zora Tunic, which gives us the ability to breathe underwater. Before we tackle the Water Temple, let's knock out a huge trading quest. In Kakariko, we get the Pocket Egg, which we use to wake up Talon yet again. Since the egg hatched, we are rewarded with a blue Kuko called Kojiro. In Lost Woods, turns out Kojiro belongs to this man, and he trades us the Odd Mushroom. Back in Kakariko, we give the Odd Mushroom to the potion shop, and we are given the Odd Potion. To the Lost Woods again, we give a girl the Odd Potion, and she trades us the Poacher's Saw. We use Epona to leap the broken bridge in Gerudo Valley and trade the Poacher's Saw to get the broken Bigoron Sword. We take the broken sword to the giant Goron atop Death Mountain and he can fix it once he gets his eye drops. So we take his prescription. We take said prescription to the Zora King who gives us the eyeball frog. We take the frog to the scientist at the lab in Lake Hylia and he gives us the eye drops, which has a time limit until they expire. We must take them all the way to Death Mountain and unfortunately I failed my first attempt. No! Trying again, we successfully make it to the Goron, and he gives us the claim check for the Bigoron sword when it's done. After a few days, we finally get the Bigoron sword, the strongest weapon in the game. Now, time for everyone's favorite temple, the Water Temple. I personally never understood the hatred for the temple. Anyways, as we move through the temple, we see our fiance for the first time in 7 years, and she pretty much hates us, but saving the Zoras is more important right now. The main mechanic of this temple is changing the water level using Zelda's Lullaby. I won't go too much into this temple as just a mix of changing levels and grabbing keys, but we arrive at what I think is the coolest mini boss in Ocarina of Time, Dark Link. The big thing Dark Link does is copies our moves, so getting damage is a challenge. However, the Bigoron sword we got before the Water Temple annihilates this mini boss, and we grab our upgraded hookshot, the Long Shot. Using our new toy, we acquire the boss key, and it's boss time. As we enter, the boss stalks us from under the surface of the water and emerges as Morpha, a monster that can control the water to create tentacles. With the long shot, we drag Morpha to the corner and jump it with the Bigoron sword to end the fight super fast, and Morpha is no more. We grab ourselves another heart container and arrive at the Chamber of the Sages, where our very own fiance is the water sage and gives us the water medallion. Back in Lake Hylia, the lake water rises back to normal, and Sheik lets us know our next destination is the evil in Kakariko village. Before we move on, we shoot the sun with an arrow to get the fire arrow, one of 3 different types of elemental arrows. Arriving in Kakariko, the village is ablaze and an evil arises from the well and decimates Sheik. After Sheik awakens, we're told Impa is one of the sages and we must defeat the Shadow Temple. Sheik then teaches us the Nocturne of Shadow, which will warp us right to the Shadow Temple. Back as a child, we play some music for a group of frogs and we grab our 30th and 31st heart pieces. In the graveyard, we have Dampe dig up our 32nd heart piece. We use the Song of Storms in the windmill building, and the windmill goes crazy and the well in Kakariko drains its water. Now it's time for the horror portion of OOT, the bottom of the well. Our main objective here is to obtain the Lens of Truth, but the creepiest monster in Zelda, Epstein Island Stephen Hawking, is in our way. The monstrosity leaves its hands like fishing lines, and once a hand has a child in its grasp, it's over. After a tough fight, the beast goes down and we get the Lens of Truth, which allows us to see invisible items and through fake walls. Using a Lens of Truth, we can do the treasure chest game and cheat our way to victory to get our 33rd heart piece. Back as an adult, we play Nocturne of Shadow to warp to Shadow Temple's entrance. We used Din's Fire we got a long time ago, finally play all the torches to open the entrance to the Shadow Temple. The Shadow Temple can be an imposing temple with a lot of invisible traps and challenging enemies. Once again, we meet another member of the list who we take care of, and in doing so, we get the hover boots, which allows us to hover for a short time after going off a ledge. We board a boat within the temple, and once again, Zelda's Lullaby powers the boat. We're jumped by a Stalfos, and after defeating it, the boat begins to sink. The walls begin to close in on us, so we use Din's Fire to destroy them and we get the boss key. Using a Lens of Truth and the hover boots, we confront the temple's boss, Bongo Bongo. We use our trusty lens and bow to stun Bongo Bongo, and after some strong eye pokes, Bongo Bongo is destroyed and we grabbed another heart container. Once again, we teleport to the Chamber of the Sages and we see that Impa is the sage of the Shadow Temple, just like Sheik told us. She gives us the Shadow Medallion and we're officially on the home stretch with just one more medallion to collect. Our final destination is in Gerudo Valley, and we arrive at the Gerudo's fortress, who don't take too kindly us and throw us in jail, but we make our escape and come across some more imprisoned people, the 4 carpenters, who we must defeat Gerudo warriors to set free. Atop the fortress, we can grab our 34th heart piece, and after we free the 4th and final carpenter, we are confronted by a Gerudo who tells us about their leader, Naburu, who went to the Spirit Temple and hasn't returned. She gives us the Gerudo membership card, which allows us to walk around Gerudo without being put back in jail. Now for the pain. We must do a horseback archery game and score 1,000 or more points to get our 35th heart piece, which we do. In order to get the final quiver upgrade, however, we must score 1,500 or more points in this minigame, and I won't even lie, this might have been the toughest part of this 100%. As you can see, this sped up amazing footage. It took an insane amount of attempts and probably around 45 to an hour timeline wise to finally be able to score 1,500 points and get the final quiver upgrade. Go! Let's go! Oh be darned, you're damn right, you stupid dumb bitch. Look at you, bitch ass. Give me that quiver. Boom! In order to get to the Spirit Temple, we must open the gate to the Haunted Wasteland. The Haunted Wasteland is a huge maze and we must follow flags set throughout to reach our destination. After a bit of time, we arrive at the Desert Colossus and Sheik once again meets us to tell us about the Spirit Temple. Sheik teaches us the Requiem of Spirit, which will allow us to warp to the Spirit Temple whenever we like. We go back to Child Link and plant a magic bean, and then go back to Adult Link to ride the magic bean to get our final heart piece. Back as a child, we head to the Desert Colossus and find a hidden Great Fairy fountain. The Great Fairy gives us Naru's love, which is basically defense magic. We head into the Spirit Temple and meet Naburu, who asks if we follow Ganondorf, and of course we don't, but she also mentions silver gauntlets, which is exactly what we want. We do battle with an Iron Knuckle, which I'd argue is the most challenging enemy in the game since it can hit hard for a whopping 4 hearts per hit as Child Link. We defeat the Iron Knuckle and get the silver gauntlets, but we also see 2 witches kidnapping Naburu. Back to the Spirit Temple as Adult Link, we face off with another Iron Knuckle, and as we defeat it, we obtain the Mirror Shield. If it wasn't obvious, the Mirror Shield allows us to reflect light or elemental damage. Anyways, we progress through the temple and we get ourselves the boss key. We melt the face of the Spirit Temple away and it's time to face the boss, another Iron Knuckle. We defeat the Iron Knuckle, and it's actually Naburu that we saw kidnapped as Child Link. Turns out the 2 witches are the actual bosses of the Spirit Temple. Phase 1 of this boss fight is pretty straightforward as each witch has its own element, so whatever we reflect, whether fire or ice, we reflect to the opposite elemental witch. For example, if we have fire on our mirror shield, we point that at the ice witch and vice versa. After a bit of damage, the witches put on Potara earrings and fuse into Twin Rova. The fight doesn't change too much in terms of strategy, so we defeat the fused witches and the 2 ascend to heaven for some reason while they share some banter. At last, we can collect our final heart container, and back at the Chamber of the Sages, Naburu is the sage of the Spirit Temple and gives us our final medallion needed, the Spirit Medallion. We are told we must go to the Temple of Time to finally settle things. We head to the Temple of Time and Sheik is there to greet us. Sheik lets us know that Triforce of Courage is within Link and the Triforce of Wisdom is within the 7th Sage, and a huge twist that at the time of my first playthrough shocked me. Sheik is actually Princess Zelda. Zelda then gives us the light arrows, the light of justice to smite evil. All of a sudden, Zelda is encased and captured by Ganondorf, and he now has 2/3 of the Triforce. Before we rescue Zelda, we actually grab the final golden Skulltula in the game located in Zora's Fountain. The reward for collecting all 100 golden Skulltulas is 200 rupees, so cool. Our final task complete before heading to Ganon's Tower is the Gerudo Training Grounds. Think of it as trials to test our skills. Completing the training grounds, we can grab the final elemental arrow in the game, the ice arrows. Now, it's time to confront Ganondorf. We arrive at his castle and turns out it is protected by 6 powerful barriers, all represented by each of the 6 medallions. Naturally, we take care of the forest barrier first. We then decide to take on the Shadow Trial and ignore the Twitch chat on screen at this point as they are down diabolical for some reason. We grab the gold gauntlets and we take care of the shadow barrier next. Before we continue the trials, we head right outside the castle and launch a massive stone to reveal the final Great Fairy fountain in the game. The Great Fairy grants us defense, which means we receive half damage from now on against enemies. Continuing in the castle, we take care of the spirit barrier, the water barrier, the fire barrier, and the light barrier to bring down the barrier protecting the interior of the castle. Now, we send up the castle and grab the boss key. We use the key and make our final ascent to the peak of Ganondorf's tower. Ganondorf is playing his organ in a devious manner and our Triforce lights up. He blasts us with evil magic and floats around in a mischievous manner. We basically have to play a game of volleyball with Ganondorf, and when we stun him with his attack, we blast him with a light arrow to begin damaging him. After an intense battle that clearly did not go well based on my health, we defeat Ganondorf, so that's it, right? Turns out Ganondorf is a sore loser and he begins to collapse the castle as Zelda is freed and joins us. We make our way down the tower just in time as the castle collapses behind us. Ganondorf emerges from the rubble of the castle and he transforms into his true form, Ganon. He knocks our Master Sword away, so we use our hammer to damage Ganon. We stun the beast and grab the Master Sword yet again. After some more fighting, Zelda uses her power to stun Ganon and we can land the final strike against him. The sages combine their strength and seal Ganondorf away. Zelda then plays a Song of Time to give us back our childhood that we lost when we lifted the Master Sword. As the credits roll, it's nice to think about the journey we went on to 100% Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time will always be one of my favorite games of all time, and it's bittersweet to complete it this time. Whenever I complete it 100%, I always feel there's no need to go back to that game, as I consider it conquered. Everything that was possible to do in the game has been completed, but I'm sure I'll play Ocarina of Time one day again. Thanks for watching.